What if everything you've been told about motivation was designed to keep you chasing instead of arriving? What if your hunger was manufactured to sell you the cure? What if desire itself has become your invisible prison? Welcome to the truth you weren't meant to discover. You're here because something about those 3 words, motivation is overrated, stirred something uncomfortable in you. Maybe you've been force-feeding yourself daily affirmations, waiting for the lightning strike of inspiration that never comes. Maybe you've built elaborate morning routines, consumed every productivity hack, and still find yourself exhausted by noon. You might even fear that without constant motivation, you'd collapse into nothing. You're not alone, and you're not broken. You've been sold a lie so perfectly crafted, it became the very air you breathe. The first truth is this: the industry of motivation is a $10 billion machine that profits from your perpetual hunger. Every guru, every influencer, every productivity expert needs you to believe that success is a drug requiring constant doses. They need you to think willpower is a muscle that must be flexed until it tears. They need you chasing the carrot while they sell you the stick. Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." But what happens when the why itself is manufactured? When your desires aren't yours at all? Let's begin where it hurts most. That feeling of inadequacy when you can't sustain the 5 a.m. routines, the cold showers, the relentless hustle. That voice telling you that you're not disciplined enough, not motivated enough, not enough at all. That voice isn't yours. The poet Rumi wrote, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." But what if the wound was inflicted just to sell you the bandage? You've been taught that action requires inspiration, that you must feel motivated before you can move. This is perhaps the most insidious lie of all. Ancient martial artists knew a different truth. Motion creates emotion. Action births motivation, not the other way around. The samurai didn't wait to feel brave before entering battle. The artist doesn't wait for inspiration before touching the canvas. Yet here you sit, paralyzed by the gap between who you are and who you think you should be. When did you first learn to distrust your natural rhythms? When did rest become laziness? When did being become less valuable than doing? The second truth emerges like a whisper. Your exhaustion isn't from lack of motivation, it's from fighting against your nature. The river doesn't struggle to flow, the tree doesn't strain to grow. Yet you've been convinced that ease equals weakness. Lao Tzu understood this paradox. Nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. But the productivity profits can't monetize natural rhythms. They need you believing that success requires constant acceleration. Picture this. A child learning to walk doesn't conceptualize motivation. They don't journal about their goals or vision board their first steps. They simply rise, fall, and rise again. The falling isn't failure, it's feedback. The rising isn't discipline, it's nature. When did you forget how to fall without shame? The Japanese have a concept called ikigai, the intersection of what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for. Notice what's missing: the constant need for external motivation. When your actions align with your essence, motivation becomes as irrelevant as needing motivation to breathe. But alignment doesn't sell subscriptions. Authenticity doesn't generate recurring revenue. So instead you're sold systems, frameworks, life hacks, anything to keep you consuming rather than creating. The third truth cuts deeper. You've been using motivation as procrastination's most sophisticated disguise. "I'll start when I feel inspired" becomes the perfect excuse to never begin. The search for motivation becomes the work itself, a hamster wheel of preparation that never leads to execution. Marcus Aurelius knew this trap. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. But the motivation merchants can't profit from you embracing obstacles. They need you believing that resistance must be eliminated rather than utilized. Here's what they don't tell you. Every master was once a disaster. Every expert was once a beginner. The difference isn't motivation, it's the willingness to be bad at something long enough to become good at it. When did you decide that imperfection was intolerable? The fourth truth arrives like dawn. Real transformation happens in the space between thoughts, in the moments when motivation is absent. It's in showing up when you don't feel like it. It's in the quiet consistency that compounds invisibly until suddenly, dramatically, everything changes. But quiet consistency doesn't go viral. It doesn't generate clicks or likes. So you're fed a diet of overnight success stories, carefully edited to hide the years of invisible work. Simone Weil wrote, "Attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity. What if the greatest gift you could give yourself isn't motivation, but attention? Not the scattered, anxious attention of someone seeking the next productivity hack, but the deep, patient attention of someone willing to witness their own becoming." The Zen masters speak of beginner's mind, approaching each moment fresh without the burden of expectation. But the motivation industry needs you carrying the weight of your unrealized potential like a backpack full of stones. When did possibility become obligation? The fifth truth whispers from the shadows. Your resistance isn't the enemy, it's the compass. What you resist reveals what matters. The projects you avoid, the dreams you defer, the conversations you delay, these aren't failures of motivation. They're messages from the part of you that knows something you're not ready to admit. Carl Jung understood, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Your lack of motivation might be your deepest wisdom trying to redirect you. But wisdom doesn't sell seminars. Think of the last time you were truly absorbed in something. Time disappeared. Effort became effortless. You weren't motivated, you were possessed by the work itself. The Greeks called this enthusiasmos, to be filled with divine spirit. No morning routine required. But absorption can't be packaged. Flow can't be scheduled. So you're sold substitutes that promise the feeling without the substance. The sixth truth emerges gently. Sustainable change happens through identity shift, not behavioral modification. You don't need motivation to be who you already are. The writer writes, the artist creates, the athlete trains. Not because they're motivated, but because that's who they've become. James Clear articulates this perfectly. Every action is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. But notice, it's not about motivation, it's about identity. Yet identity transformation is slow, unglamorous work that doesn't fit in a 30-day challenge. When did you start believing you needed permission to become yourself? The seventh truth arrives like a gift. Your natural energy has seasons. There are times for expansion and times for contraction, times for doing and times for being. The motivation industry denies these rhythms because they can't be monetized. You can't sell acceptance of natural cycles. The Tao Te Ching reminds us, nature does not hurry, yet everything is accomplished. Your burnout isn't from lack of motivation, it's from violating your natural rhythms in pursuit of an artificial ideal. Picture the ocean. It doesn't motivate itself to create waves. It responds to the moon, the wind, the Earth's rotation. Its power comes from alignment with forces greater than itself. What if your power works the same way? The eighth truth settles like dust. Most of what you call procrastination is actually your intuition protecting you from pursuing paths that aren't truly yours. The project that keeps getting delayed, the goal that never quite manifests. Perhaps these aren't failures but wisdom. Rainer Maria Rilke wrote, "The only journey is the one within." But inner journeys don't have progress bars. They can't be gamified. So you're taught to measure your worth by external metrics that have nothing to do with your actual growth. When did you stop trusting your inner compass? The ninth truth blooms slowly. True motivation is silent. It doesn't announce itself with fanfare or require daily affirmations. It's the quiet pull that draws you to your work like a magnet. It's the invisible thread connecting you to what matters. But silence doesn't sell. Quiet dedication doesn't trend. So you're bombarded with noise masquerading as inspiration. The Bhagavad Gita teaches, you have the right to work, but never to the fruit of work. This is the paradox the motivation industry can't comprehend. Detachment from outcome increases effectiveness. But how do you sell detachment to a culture addicted to results? The 10th truth dawns gradually. Your struggles with motivation aren't personal failures, they're systemic features. The same society that fragments your attention, disrupts your rhythms, and disconnects you from meaning then sells you motivation as the cure. You're not unmotivated. You're responding sanely to an insane world. Krishnamurti observed, "It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. Your resistance might be your sanity asserting itself." The 11th truth whispers softly, "Energy flows where alignment goes." When your actions align with your values, motivation becomes irrelevant. When your work serves something larger than yourself, inspiration becomes inevitable. But alignment requires the courage to disappoint others' expectations. It demands the strength to walk away from impressive goals that don't resonate with your soul. The motivation industry can't sell you this courage. When did you trade your truth for their approval? The 12th truth emerges like a lotus. Your being has its own intelligence. Your body knows when to rest. Your mind knows when to engage. Your spirit knows when to soar. Motivation becomes necessary only when you've lost touch with this innate wisdom. Alan Watts understood, muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone. Sometimes the most motivated action is conscious inaction. But try selling that in a culture obsessed with constant doing. The 13th truth reveals itself slowly. Most motivation is fear in disguise. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of not being enough. Strip away the fear, and what remains isn't motivation. It's love. Love for the craft. Love for the process. Love for the becoming. But love can't be manufactured. It can't be scheduled. It emerges spontaneously when conditions are right, like flowers blooming in spring. Khalil Gibran wrote, "Work is love made visible. When work becomes love, motivation becomes obsolete." The 14th truth settles like evening. Your worth isn't measured by your productivity. Your value isn't determined by your output. You are not a machine to be optimized, but a being to be expressed. The motivation industry needs you believing otherwise. It profits from your self-doubt, thrives on your insecurity, feeds on your fear of falling behind. When did being human become insufficient? The 15th truth arrives like grace. Permission to be unmotivated is often the gateway to genuine inspiration. When you stop forcing, flow becomes possible. When you release the pressure to perform, authentic expression emerges. The Zen saying goes, "Spring comes and the grass grows by itself." Your creativity, your productivity, your growth, these are natural processes that unfold in their own time. Force distorts, pressure deforms. The 16th truth surfaces like a buried memory. You've been taught to fear emptiness, the space between actions, the void between thoughts, the pause between breaths. Yet it's precisely in these gaps that true motivation is born. Not the artificial kind that needs constant feeding, but the organic impulse that arises from stillness. The Buddhists call this shunyata, the fertile void. The motivation industry fills every moment with noise because silence would reveal the truth. You already contain everything you need. Think of a seed. It doesn't motivate itself to grow. It doesn't attend workshops on becoming a tree. It simply responds to conditions: soil, water, sunlight. Your deepest motivations work the same way. They're not constructed, they're awakened. But awakening can't be commodified. It can't be packaged into a 7-step system or a morning routine. So you're sold substitutes that keep you seeking outside what can only be found within. The 17th truth whispers through the cracks, your body keeps the score. Every time you override your natural rhythms for artificial productivity, your nervous system remembers that chronic fatigue, that persistent anxiety, that sense of running on empty. These aren't motivation deficits. They're your body's rebellion against a life lived in violation of your nature. Thich Nhat Hanh taught, there is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. Replace happiness with motivation, and the truth remains. There is no way to motivation. Being fully present is the motivation. The 18th truth unfolds like a flower. Comparison is the thief of motivation. Every time you measure your chapter 3 against someone else's chapter 20, you drain the very energy you seek. The curated highlight reels of others' lives become weapons against your own becoming. Theodore Roosevelt knew, comparison is the thief of joy. But the motivation industry thrives on comparison. It needs you feeling perpetually behind, always chasing someone else's definition of success. When did you forget that your path is incomparable? The 19th truth settles like morning dew. True motivation arises from connection, not isolation. The heroic individual grinding alone is a myth that serves the machine. Indigenous wisdom teaches that we find our energy in community, in service, in the web of relationships that give life meaning. But connection can't be monetized like products can. Belonging doesn't generate recurring revenue, so you're sold the lone wolf narrative, even as isolation drains the very motivation you seek. The 20th truth emerges from the depths. Your so-called laziness might be your soul's resistance to meaningless activity. That project you can't start, that goal you can't pursue. Perhaps your deeper wisdom knows something your conscious mind hasn't admitted. Viktor Frankl discovered in the concentration camps, those who have a why to live can bear with almost any how. But what if your why has been manufactured? What if your goals are someone else's dreams? The 21st truth crystallizes slowly. The motivation industry creates the disease it claims to cure. By fragmenting your attention, disrupting your rhythms, and severing you from your intrinsic drives, it creates a dependency on external motivation. Then it sells you the solution to the problem it created. It's like breaking your legs to sell you crutches, then convincing you that walking naturally is impossible. The 22nd truth rises like the tide. Your creative energy has its own intelligence. It knows when to surge and when to recede. The artist's block, the writer's resistance, the entrepreneur's hesitation, these aren't failures of motivation. They're parts of the creative cycle as natural as winter following autumn. Picasso understood, inspiration exists, but it has to find you working. But notice, he didn't say motivation, he said inspiration, and he knew it finds you in the work, not before it. The 23rd truth speaks through silence. Every master has periods of emptiness, every genius has fallow times, every creator has seasons of apparent inactivity where the real work happens underground, invisible to the productivity-obsessed eye. Einstein knew this. Creativity is the residue of time wasted. But try selling that in a culture that treats time like a commodity to be optimized. When did you stop trusting the wisdom of emptiness? The 24th truth arrives like a gentle rain. Your relationship with motivation reflects your relationship with yourself. When you treat yourself like a machine to be optimized, motivation becomes fuel to be consumed. When you honor yourself as a living ecosystem, motivation becomes a natural expression of alignment. Mary Oliver asked, "Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?" Notice she didn't ask what you plan to achieve, produce, or optimize. She asked what you plan to do, to experience, to be. The 25th truth illuminates like dawn. Most of what you call lack of motivation is actually misalignment. You're not unmotivated, you're pointed in the wrong direction. Your energy isn't low, it's invested in maintaining a false self. Jung warned, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But becoming requires unbecoming first. It requires shedding the motivations that were never yours." The 26th truth echoes through time. Ancient cultures didn't have a word for motivation because they didn't need one. When life has meaning, when work has purpose, when community has cohesion, motivation takes care of itself. We've created a world so divorced from natural rhythms and authentic purpose that we need artificial stimulation just to function. Then we pathologize the natural resistance to this artificiality. The 27th truth pulses like a heartbeat. Your energy is speaking to you constantly. That resistance you feel isn't a character flaw, it's feedback. That procrastination isn't weakness, it's wisdom. That lack of motivation isn't failure, it's guidance. But in a world that worships productivity, we've lost the ability to read our own signals. Khalil Gibran knew, your pain is the breaking of the shell that encloses your understanding. Your struggle with motivation might be the breaking of the shell that encloses your authentic self. The 28th truth flows like water. Surrender is not defeat. Accepting your natural rhythms is not laziness. Honoring your energy cycles is not weakness. The river doesn't fight its course. It finds the path of least resistance and carves canyons. The Tao Te Ching teaches, the soft overcomes the hard, the gentle overcomes the rigid. Yet we're taught that success requires hardness, that achievement demands rigidity. When did you decide that gentleness was inadequate? The 29th truth resonates like a bell. Your worth precedes your productivity. You don't earn the right to exist through achievement. You don't justify your presence through output. You are not a human doing, but a human being. The motivation industry inverts this truth. It teaches that you must produce to matter, achieve to belong, optimize to be worthy. This is the fundamental lie that keeps you trapped in cycles of artificial striving. The 30th truth arrives like a long-awaited friend. Integration is the antidote to motivation. When your work aligns with your values, when your actions express your essence, when your doing flows from your being, motivation becomes as irrelevant as needing motivation to breathe. But integration requires courage. It demands the willingness to disappoint others' expectations. It asks you to choose authenticity over approval. The Upanishads declare, you are what your deep driving desire is. But what happens when you discover your deepest desires aren't yours at all? The 31st truth whispers like wind through leaves. Nature never rushes, yet everything blooms in its season. The oak doesn't motivate itself to grow from an acorn. The butterfly doesn't force itself from the chrysalis. Your unfolding has its own perfect timing. The urgency you feel, the pressure to constantly produce, these are not natural laws but cultural constructs. They serve the machine, not your soul. The 32nd truth settles like sediment. Your boredom might be sacred. In a world of constant stimulation, the ability to be bored is revolutionary. It's in the spaces of nothing happening that something new can emerge. But boredom doesn't drive clicks. Empty space doesn't generate engagement, so you're taught to fear the void that is actually the womb of creativity. Rilke counseled, be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart. But patience doesn't sell. Instant transformation does. The 33rd truth reveals itself gradually. The most motivated people aren't driven by motivation at all. They're pulled by meaning, drawn by purpose, called by something larger than themselves. Motivation is what you need when you're going in the wrong direction. Joseph Campbell described it. Follow your bliss and the universe will open doors where there were only walls. But he said bliss, not motivation. He said follow, not force. The 34th truth emerges like a lotus from mud. Your failures of motivation might be your greatest successes of authenticity. Every time you couldn't force yourself to pursue what didn't resonate, every time you failed to maintain enthusiasm for someone else's dream, these weren't weaknesses. They were your truth asserting itself. The poet David Whyte writes, what you can plan is too small for you to live. Your resistance to certain goals might be your soul's recognition of your own vastness. The 35th truth crystallizes like frost. The motivation industry sells you solutions to problems it created. It fragments your attention, then sells you focus. It disrupts your rhythms, then sells you routines. It disconnects you from meaning, then sells you purpose. You're not broken. You're responding appropriately to a system designed to keep you seeking. The 36th truth lands like a feather. You are already whole. Not after you achieve your goals. Not when you finally get motivated. Not once you optimize your routines. Right now, in this moment, with all your resistance and doubt and perceived inadequacies, you are complete. The motivation industry cannot survive if you know this truth. Its entire model depends on your belief in your own insufficiency. The 37th truth blooms in darkness. Your shadows contain your power. The parts of you that resist, that rebel, that refuse to conform, these aren't obstacles to overcome, but allies to embrace. Your wholeness includes your resistance. Jung taught, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Your lack of motivation might be the darkness trying to make itself conscious. The 38th truth flows like a river. Energy follows authenticity. When you align with your true nature, motivation becomes effortless. When you honor your genuine desires, action flows naturally. The struggle isn't in doing, it's in doing what isn't yours to do. Ram Dass understood. We're all just walking each other home. Perhaps your resistance to constant achievement is your soul's reminder that the journey matters more than the destination. The 39th truth settles like dust. You don't need more motivation. You need more permission. Permission to rest, permission to question. Permission to discover what truly moves you, even if it defies conventional wisdom. The final truth lands like a feather. You don't need more motivation, you need more truth, more alignment, more courage to honor your natural rhythms, more wisdom to distinguish between resistance and guidance. The secret was never about finding motivation. It was about removing everything that stands between you and your natural state of inspired action. Hermann Hesse wrote, "Some of us think holding on makes us strong, but sometimes it is letting go. Let go of the need to be constantly motivated. Let go of the guilt when inspiration wanes. Let go of the belief that you're broken when you can't sustain artificial enthusiasm." In that letting go, you might discover something revolutionary. Your natural state isn't laziness, it's readiness, not for constant action but for right action, not for perpetual motion but for purposeful movement. The motivation industry will continue its siren song. The productivity prophets will keep preaching their gospel of endless optimization. But you now hold a different truth. Real power isn't in the ability to force yourself into action. It's in the wisdom to act from alignment. Real strength isn't in maintaining constant motivation. It's in honoring your natural rhythms. Real success isn't in optimizing every moment. It's in living authentically even when, especially when, it defies conventional wisdom. You came here seeking motivation. Perhaps you're leaving with something more valuable. Permission to trust your own rhythms, to honor your own timing, to follow your own path. The room you've entered today isn't about motivation at all. It's about remembering who you were before the world convinced you that you needed to be fixed. Rumi's words echo one final time. What you seek is seeking you, not through force, not through motivation, but through the simple act of removing everything that stands in the way of your natural unfolding. If these words found something sleeping within you, if they touched a truth you've been afraid to acknowledge, leave a piece of that recognition below. Not because I need your engagement, but because someone else might need to find the breadcrumbs you leave behind. Tell me, what permission did you just give yourself? What truth about motivation were you afraid to admit until now? I'll be here reading every word, honoring every revelation. Because this isn't just a video you stumbled upon. This is a mirror that found you at precisely the right moment. And perhaps that's the greatest truth of all. You didn't lack motivation to find this room. You were simply ready to remember what you've always known.